We hope you enjoyed this bit of entertainment. Please like and subscribe. Tell us what you like most in the comments. It was the week before Christmas, and Coach Dan, the school's perpetually grumpy football coach, was having none of the holiday cheer that seemed to infect the entire town. As the kids practiced their chaotic Christmas pageant, complete with floss-dancing elves and a break-dancing Rudolph, Coach Dan stood on the sidelines muttering, "Coach Dan, I run drills, I teach plays, I don't do tinsel," he grumbled to the choir teacher, who was trying to get him to wear a Santa hat. "Principal Dan, you're the only one who fits in the Santa suit. It's this or you're in charge of baking 300 sugar cookies for the PTA. Your choice." Begrudgingly, he donned the suit, muttering under his breath, "Coach Dan, this is worse than the time Jimmy tried to tackle me in PE and sprained my ankle." That night, after another exhausting rehearsal, Coach Dan trudged home, still wearing the Santa suit. As he passed the town square, he heard a strange sound behind him, a low growl, followed by the jingle of bells. Coach Dan, probably a stray cat, he muttered, refusing to turn around. But then came the thump, thump, thump of tiny feet. Coach Dan turned and froze. There, illuminated by the glow of the town's massive Christmas tree, stood a terrifying pint-sized gremlin. It had spiky green fur, sharp yellow eyes, and fangs that glinted in the light. Oddly, it was wearing a Christmas sweater that read, "Santa's Lil Nightmare." Before Coach Dan could react, the gremlin let out a shriek and charged. "Coach Dan, what in the holly jolly is that?" Coach screamed, sprinting down Main Street like his life depended on it. The gremlin was fast, shockingly fast for something with such tiny legs. Coach Dan barreled past the diner, nearly toppling a waitress carrying a tray of pies. "Coach Dan, save yourselves," he shouted. The gremlin followed, leaping onto a snowman display and using its carrot nose as a javelin. Coach ducked just in time, the carrot whizzing past his ear and lodging in a streetlight. He darted into the hardware store, thinking he'd lost his pursuer, only for the gremlin to pop out of a display of inflatable Santas. "Coach Dan, why is this happening?" Coach yelled, knocking over a stack of lawn chairs in his panic. As the chase continued, Coach Dan's attempts to evade the gremlin grew more desperate and ridiculous. The ice rink incident. He slid onto the town's outdoor skating rink, grabbing a pair of skates in a desperate attempt to escape. It worked for about 3 seconds before he tripped over a toddler's hockey stick and landed flat on his back. The gremlin glided past on skates it had mysteriously acquired, executing a flawless triple axel just to mock him. The candy cane trap coach ducked into a candy store, hoping to blend in. But when the gremlin burst through the door, Coach panicked and tried to defend himself with a giant novelty candy cane. The gremlin snapped it in half like a twig and used it as a pogo stick to chase him out of the store. The parade hijacking. Coach Dan accidentally ran straight into the town's annual Christmas parade. Desperate, he hopped onto a float shaped like a gingerbread house. The gremlin followed, commandeering a miniature reindeer float and using it as a battering ram. By now, half the town had joined in, cheering as though this were some bizarre Christmas marathon. "Quarterback, run, Coach, run!" shouted the quarterback of his football team. "Kid, this is better than Netflix," yelled another kid. Exhausted, Coach Dan finally found himself cornered in front of the massive Christmas tree in the town square. He grabbed a handful of ornaments as makeshift weapons. "Coach Dan? All right, you little goblin, let's finish this. You're not ruining my holiday spirit because I never had any." The gremlin hissed and approached slowly, holding something behind its back. Coach flinched, expecting a snowball or worse. Instead, the gremlin extended a small, brightly wrapped box. "Coach Dan." What is this?" Coach asked, bewildered. The gremlin didn't speak, just pushed the gift into his hands and stepped back, nodding. With trembling fingers, Coach Dan unwrapped the box. Inside was a pristine, autographed Babe Ruth baseball, complete with a certificate of authenticity. Coach Dan's jaw dropped. "Coach Dan, is this real? How did you—" But the gremlin was already gone, disappearing into the shadows with a joyful cackle. From that day forward, Coach Dan was a changed man. He not only embraced the holiday spirit, but became the town's biggest Christmas enthusiast. At the next pageant, he wore an elf costume without complaint and even joined the kids in their floss dancing routine. And every Christmas Eve, he left out a plate of cookies, not for Santa, but for the mysterious Gremlin who had given him the best Christmas gift of all. Rumour has it, if you look closely during the parade, you might spot a tiny figure in a Christmas sweater, watching from the rooftops, ready to spread a little chaos and maybe a little holiday cheer. Be safe and have sweet dreams.